So we are here with Tamar Berkowitz, who is somebody I know from my past. Really quick, because just a little, it's always fun to have a little fun information. Tamar and I lived in LA together, and we both did makeup. And she actually assisted me a couple times on some jobs, which was really fun. And then she moved out to Florida and became this awesome health guru. And I will be tagging her and all the things. And you guys all should really go check her out because she is a wealth of information for health and embodiment, and anyone struggling in those fields, you really want to check her out. And I know you have all these gifts and services, memberships, and you do a lot of things in Florida. So definitely check her out. And today we are here talking about Teves on our monthly Rosh Chodesh podcast. And I do this because I do a Rosh Chodesh circle in Atlanta. Many people are doing Rosh Chodesh circles around, moon circles. And I also find that people don't have access to it. And there's so much really good information. My favorite part is the energies that we can harness in each month and use to our ability with what's going on in life, with what's going on personally in the world. And so I really love to get into it with different people. And every person who I've interviewed so far, this is my third one, it's really come organically, godly, where it just works out that I'm getting the right person for each month. So I'm super excited to start getting into this with Tamar and see what comes up. Teves is also a very special month for me. It is my anniversary month.
Happy.
Yes, thank you. Exciting. Havdalah Teves, which is a really holy day. It's the Alter Rebbe's yahrzeit. And it is our 18th anniversary. So a big year.
Beautiful.
Thank you. I also have 2 kids born in this month. And so I have a bar mitzvah coming up in this month, which is
My God.
exciting. Yeah.
Wow. Already? That's crazy.
Already. I know it's nuts. We blinked. What can I say? We blinked. They say don't blink. I blinked. It's happening.
I remember when he was a little baby. That's crazy.
I know.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the beautiful intro. Thank you for having me. I also feel like it was just so divinely designed that you had me for Teves, just because I happen to love this month so much, which is funny because it's actually a really harsh, intense month. But all the energy and lessons within it, it's so much like everything that I preach and that I always teach in all of my healing teachings and all of that. I'm a somatic practitioner and an energy healer and a nervous system coach. And I have a membership where we have live calls every month where we do all of the healing according to the current energy of the month. So we have to start a new moon call. And
that's
coming
so
from this.
cool. Sorry, I need to interrupt to say that's so cool. I didn't know that. You need to advertise that more. That's awesome.
I know I'm getting there. It's a lot of things at once.
Yeah.
But as like a somatic healer and energy healer, the things that I draw out of the energy of the month is a map to our healing, what we're meant to be focusing on right now. And because with every month there's a body part associated with it and a sense associated with it, I'm able to create this like embodiment meditation that we can actually experience the somatic, embodied, visceral healing available to us right now. And it's so much more powerful because the energy is right here supporting us in this. So I'm excited. Let's get into it. So Teves it's considered to be a really harsh month. It's the first of the 3 winter months, and it's considered the darkest month of the year. It's very feminine energy. It's that receiving dark moon energy, and feminine energy is directly correlated with the body. And so these 3 winter months coming up, they are a special time to give extra attention to our physical needs and functions and their spiritual correspondences. So the body has 3 basic needs, right? It's to procreate and to eat and to drink. And so the next 3 months, each corresponds to one of those. And so Teves corresponds to procreation because it's a very cool time. So in the Gemara, it's referred to as a month when a body takes pleasure from the warmth of another body. So we have to break this down a little bit though, because it's not.
I'm actually really excited for you to break this down because I did go over this in our moon circle.
Okay, nice.
But I found that the places I pull information from didn't really delve into it.
Okay.
I was like, it was like, oh, it's about intimacy. It's about working on relationship. And then I'm like looking through the books and I'm like, where's the rest? Like, I
Right.
want more. So yes, I'm excited. Let's go.
So with this part, it is definitely about around like relationships and intimacy, but there's a lot more deeper stuff we'll definitely get into. But we have to break this specific part down because it's not procreation specifically at all. It's about physical intimacy, which doesn't only apply to the act of procreation. And then there's also intimacy, right? So the physical intimacy part is really speaking to our physical desires. So this is a time to refine how we're experiencing them and serving them. Are we coming from an egoic place of pleasing my physical desires, which is very Asav energy, right? Or am I coming from the place of considering my spiritual world, my soul, my intuitive needs beyond the physical? So that's one part of what we're meant to refine this month. And then the second part is intimacy. So intimacy is the foundation of all relationships, right? So we are really meant to assess all the different relationships in our lives. Like, how are we showing up in each individual relationship? How are we not showing up for the other person or for ourselves within the relationship, right? Is this relationship self-serving on either side, or is it a balance of giving and receiving from both sides? So by assessing this, we're able to feel into the necessary changes we need to make within our personal relationships. And the biggest underlying factor of both of these is keeping our ego in check, because it's our ego that has this tendency towards selfishness and possessiveness and anger, which are all physical surface tendencies. And so, like in my membership, I created like a whole list of journaling prompts to guide you into literally breaking down every single relationship within your life, like very detailed questions to help you guide you on that journey of really refining every relationship in your life.
So I have a pause for a second. I have a question. Like
Yeah.
you're saying that it has a lot to do with ego, which I agree. And so if someone wants to check themselves, they're like, I'm having a relationship, I'm having a little difficulty in this relationship, I want to work on it. How is one to know if what they're doing is ego-based for themselves or if it's something that's more altruistic from a godly? Because it's a very fine line.
Yeah, it is a very fine line. So it takes having the ability to be really honest with yourself and to be able to come up against your ego. Some people are not there yet, and some of us are. And even if we are, it's still hard. It's still
Right.
hard to do, to be like, oh, this relationship is actually self-serving. And it's really all about what I'm getting out of it. And so there's a lot of questions that we have to break down. That's why I made this like
Right.
intensive deep
Breakdown list. That makes sense.
'cause it's right. Like even when we ask ourselves one question, we always have to keep digging and be like, okay, what else? Okay, what else? Okay, what
Okay.
else? That's how we get deeper and deeper into stuff. But yeah, it's a lot. It's hard to go there for a lot of people.
Okay. But there's like a pausing and kind of check in with yourself.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So the sense also this month is anger, right?
Yeah.
And the body part is the liver. And according to the Gemara and also Chinese traditional medicine and energy medicine and all the
How
things,
it's
the liver is
connected.
anger. Yeah. And it's
The
so cool
liver
that
is
like,
anger in all of that.
yeah, the liver is where we store our anger, rage,
Mhm.
and resentment. We
Oh,
store it
wow.
in the liver, right? Because we store all different emotions in different body parts, which is how energy healing works and somatic release works. We like hit the body part where the thing is being held, and then we get to have the emotional release.
Wow.
So we're meant to refine our anger, right? And so the key to healing anger is firstly, we have to understand that the emotion itself is neutral. A lot of people, we have the misunderstanding that anger is a bad thing. We have to abolish it. We have to not be angry. But the thing that is negative about anger is not the anger itself, it's the story attached to it. It's the story attached to the anger that we hold that can be something destructive. So like what happens, and this is very classic in somatic healing, what we do when we remove the story and we drop the story and we're left with just the physical sensations of it, right? So And then we allow ourselves to only be present with the sensations. So first of all, what are those sensations? Usually it's increased heart rate. It's like an increased respiratory rate, increased blood flow. There's a lot of heat moving through the body. And when we're able to just sit with that, then we're able to redirect it for a different purpose, right? Such as passion or pleasure. And I think that it's so interesting that this month is about anger and also about physical intimacy, because it's God is giving us the key here to how we can actually have the ability to shift our anger and redirect it into a positive or productive anger or into passion or pleasure.
Right.
Because if we're sitting with
Which is
just those
positive.
visceral sensations, yeah, but if we're sitting with just those visceral sensations, like the increased heart rate, increased breath, the heat, those are the exact same visceral sensations we have when we're having an orgasm. It's
Right.
the same. So it's the difference is just the hormone being released. But if I can assert my own personal power in this moment of anger to drop the story and stay with just the sensation alone, and then using those sensations, redirect my attention to a different story, say one of pleasure, I'm changing the physiological response of my body, and I can shut off all that adrenaline and cortisol and then turn on my oxytocin and dopamine and serotonin. And the other
Hold
really
on.
fast,
Okay,
yeah.
finish. Go ahead. Go ahead. This is great.
There's just one more. This is so fascinating to me.
Okay.
So the body part is the liver, right? Which is located in the solar plexus energy center of the body. And the solar plexus is where our personal power lives. And it takes our personal power and owning our personal power to be able to do this, like to be able to drop the story, because we're very addicted to the story.
Yeah,
Very,
we need to talk about that because that you're saying it, but it doesn't seem so easy. First of all,
it's
what's the
not
solar plexus? Please explain.
It is the area of the body between the like top of the belly button and the lower ribs area.
Okay.
So we have different energy centers. It's called the chakra system. I'm sure you've heard of that
Yeah.
before, right? Different energy centers through the body. So that area, that's the third chakra called the solar plexus. And energetically, it's where our personal power lives.
Okay.
So it's amazing that like the liver is located exactly in this area where we need to assert our personal power in order to have the ability to do something like that.
Right.
And one more, even more
Next
fascinating.
level.
I know I get so excited about this stuff
Love
because it's
it.
so cool to me. Is that what is the liver's job in the body? It's to convert toxins into nutrients, right? Like, for example, it converts glucose into glycogen. So it transforms something potentially harmful into something good. And the liver is where we store our anger. So that's showing us the very place where we store our anger is the organ that has the ability to transform negative into positive,
Wow.
showing us the ability to transform our anger that's living there into something positive or productive.
It's so cool. And then we're going to backtrack because I have so much to ask and converse about. But it's so cool how so clearly this is showing up physically and energetically.
Yes.
And in this month of darkness and chaos and anger, and we'll get into the letters soon, the ayin tov and the ayin, it's this physical thing that we're doing with the liver and the physical taking toxins and making it clean. And then it's also that emotional of the anger into the power. So first of all, the anger into the pleasure is, I'm sure like every husband, spouse is gonna be thrilled with this conversation. And
Yeah.
be like, yeah, don't be mad at me. Let's just move on to that orgasm. That would be wonderful. But
Only it was.
so let's break that down a minute. So we talked about this in our Rosh Chodesh circle this week. And on the one side, it's wonderful. Like it's really about limiting beliefs, right? That's what this month is talking about. Dropping that narrative is a story that you're telling yourself essentially that this happened and that happened. And the thing about limiting beliefs and narratives that people forget to say is that it could be true. It doesn't mean it's not the truth. It could be not true, but it also could be truth. But the question is it serving you?
Exactly.
Is this a service to you? So yes, it's truth. Yes, you could get angry about it, but is that serving you? And many times, no. And turning it into passion that might serve you better in relationship. But it's also a really tough thing to do, to separate the two. And it's not something you really can do after the fact. Like all those visceral sensations happen in the moment. So the blood rising, the heat coming, seeing red, people love to say that when they're angry. It's not something you'd be like, oh, I was angry, and then have those physical reactions. So is there anything you can maybe suggest or an idea where if someone is in the moment now, and because consciousness really shows up in this way where it's maybe before they didn't do it, they didn't know about it, but now you know about it, right? Now that you can drop a narrative when you're angry and use that fuel and use that power. So let's say moment of anger and you remember this talk that we're having. You had heard this podcast, you remember this talk, and you're like, even just out of curiosity, not even that you care in that moment, curious, right? I want to drop this story and use this power. What would be a suggestion? Is there anything to do, or is it just the understanding of it?
So it's the understanding, but it's really the will. We have to have the will, which is interesting because also in the soul, like part of
I was going to say back to the power in the solar plex. Okay.
It's our willingness, right? Because it's like we have to really want that for ourselves. We have to have that level of like self-love and self-devotion that I care more than anything about my own well-being to the point that I don't want to experience the toxic destruction of anger that it's causing in my own body, right? Like we have to be aware, first of all, that's what anger is doing to us. Like your anger is not doing anything for the person you're angry at. It's literally not doing a thing for them. It's only destroying you, right? Like I came to that awareness in my own life because I had such deep, dark, intense traumas that I just wanted desperately to free myself of the pain of it all. So I was like, whatever about them. I'm a slave right now. Like I'm like a prisoner of this anger that's just taking over me and I don't want it anymore. And like I'll do whatever it takes to get rid of it. But also it's really good to have the awareness. Like I'm a total science nerd and like biology and neuroscience, but it's so incredible for us to have the knowledge of how that stuff works because when we understand that our body is actually addicted to these like negative sides of these emotions like a drug, truly, like when we release that cortisol and we release all of that adrenaline that's attached to the destructive anger, our cells literally become addicted to it like a drug. And we're not aware of that because we don't want to be feeling it. It's not like we enjoy it. But what happens is it's like the cell becomes, it starts to close off its receptors and then it needs like a bigger hit to receive that, to receive the hormone. So that's why, that's also one of the reasons why, like energetically, it's if you're having a bad day and you stub your toe and then you're pissed and then the next bad thing happens and let's one thing after the next, right? And there's the energetic level that like you're holding that energy and attracting the things, but there's also a deeper level of our body is always trying to reach homeostasis. It's always trying to release the anger. So it's looking for an outlet. It's looking for a way to make you angry. So you could release the anger already and get it out of your body. But then there's also the physiological thing going on of your cells. Give me another hit of that cortisol. Needs it. So I think just the awareness of that helps to give us like a little bit more control of, oh, I'm like an addict in a sense to this. And I have to do like deeper work to actually overcome this and do deeper work to actively seek out the joy and the pleasure that I want to be experiencing in my life. It's a very active process, like healing and choosing and asserting our personal power, which is interesting. That's also very much tied to the energy of this month because those 3 bodily needs of the winter months are the only 3 bodily needs that we have to actively participate in. All the other bodily needs our body does on its own without us having to think about it, like breathing,
sleep,
digestion, sleeping, exactly.
Wow.
Where we have to actively procreate, we have to actively eat and drink. And so it speaks to like the process. It takes the active doing in order to overcome these things. It's a choice and it is our personal power. It's bigger than us because we're overcoming our physiology, but we have the ability to do that.
That's so interesting. It's also so interesting because I never thought of it in a way of a drug where like your body wants another hit of it. But if you think about it, when people get righteously angry, like there's an
Yeah.
excitement in there. If you're mad at someone or a person, like even someone you don't know, it's a conversation. Then you're talking higher and you're speaking higher. And it's the same thing in intimacy. Like when you get excited physically, it's the same physical reaction. It gets excited, gets more excited, and your body wants more of it. And
Right.
they're both a release, essentially.
Totally. But it's not a release when we're in the mind and it's just this then we're caught in the negative loop. The release
Right.
only happens from the body. So that
The
only
physical.
happens when we're removing the story and with the sensation, and then we can
Wow.
fully release. But the what you said is so on point, and the example I always use, because I think it's like just the most relatable for the majority of people, is like people who can't stand their mother-in-laws. Like when you complain about your mother-in-law, how it's like you like you just have to repeat the same story 100 times, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like need because
And you
it's
tell your sister and you tell your friend and you tell, oh my God, can you believe what happened? Oh my God, can you believe what happened? It keeps going,
and
going.
every time the memory is triggered, you have to talk about it. Like it
Mm,
has to just, and that's, but it's all in your mind. So that's
right.
another thing of like awareness is so key to separate the body and the mind, that our mind is not serving us. So the more we can drop deeper into our body, that's where all the healing happens. Like
Mm.
all the real sustainable healing, that we don't loop back and we don't get re-traumatized. That's where the real releases get to happen, which is
So
why
that's
somatic is so
thematic.
powerful.
So that's very heavy. That's very heavy. That's very into this month. Like the whole idea of the sense of anger is really talking about the visceral effect of it. That's really the somatic healing, right? Is
Right.
through physical representation in the body.
Yeah.
Wow. Very cool. Okay, so the other thing that I found really interesting about this month, so the letter is the letter Ayin, which means I. And
Yes.
I'd love to delve into this too. I think that letters are really cool. The Hebrew letters are really cool. They're really powerful. I
Yeah.
love how everywhere I read about this letter Ayin, oh, sorry about that. How everywhere I read about this letter Ayin, it refers back to the Ayin Tov. So Ayin is an eye, and Ayin Tov is the good eye, and Ayin Ra is the bad eye. And the one thing I heard that I thought was so beautiful is that the beginning of the month of Teves always falls out at the last couple of days of Hanukkah.
Mm.
So the last couple of days of Hanukkah start at the beginning of the month of Teves, which is why this month's recording is a little pushed off because I didn't have my circle till after, etc. And it talks about how to keep a good eye. So you can choose, and back to this kind of letting go of the narratives
Mm.
of limiting beliefs, you can see something and you can choose whether it's a positive intake or whether it's a negative intake. And the thing that I heard that was so beautiful is that when you look at the candles, and we're directed not to use the candles for anything, but to literally sit in front of the candles and stare at them. And I took that very seriously this year, and it was amazing. And I felt like the candles really spoke to me, which was beautiful. But when you stare at the candles, you actually change what. So there's a whole thing about the Hasidic, the 5 levels of the soul. I don't know enough about it. We're not going to get into that right now. But I did read somewhere, which was really cool, that when you stare at fire, the colors represent, fire has yellow and orange and blue and black, and they represent different ways of comforting the body, which makes sense in like caveman days when like it was dark and they were scared and they were animals. So some of them represent other things. So I'd love if you can talk more about sight and seeing and comfort and body and all that stuff.
Okay. I have a lot of really
I
cool things to say
figured
about the
you'd have a lot. That's why I'm at.
So first of all, what's really cool about letters, I'm also like, I'm obsessed with Hebrew letters because the depth that is there is just incredible. And so one of the places where we find the deeper energies of what each letter represents is the first time that that letter is used as the first letter of a word in the Torah. So where ayin is, it's used in the word al, and so it's not It doesn't just mean on, it's like in the context of the sentence. And I don't remember it in Hebrew, but it means like the darkness is on the surface of the deep, which also speaks very much to
How
ayin and
poetic.
I, because eyes are the window to the soul. They're the
Right.
surface of our depth.
Ooh,
And I have to backtrack a little bit with the letter thing and the name of the month, and then I'm going to connect all of this
okay.
because it's so cool. So the word Teves, right? So again, like using that formula of the first words in the Torah with these letters, Taf, Tes, Base, Taf, right? So the first words in the Torah with those letters are Tov and Bereshis and Tohu. So if you put them together, they form the sentence Tov Bereshis Tohu, which means there is good within the source of chaos. And anger is
Wow.
chaotic energy. So
Woo.
also surface is also speaking very much to the ego and serving our physical body and not going deeper. So when I learned that, instantly this like somatic practice just came into my brain of doing a somatic practice of basically creating the letter Ayin with your body, the cursive version of Ayin. So
Okay.
like just like this, right? Because the top of an Ayin looks like
Yeah.
this. And it is a somatic practice of using our Ayin Tov, of choosing using our Ayin Tov to see the goodness within the chaos, right? So we can cross our own arms over our chest, creating that letter Ayin. And as we breathe, just like imprinting this Ayin Tov into our body. And you can use an affirmation that feels true and authentic to you. So, like something along the lines of, I'm choosing to see good in this situation. Or even though I don't see the good yet, I'm choosing to trust that there's good there. And when we're doing this, we are physically hugging ourselves, which
Yeah.
is a great somatic regulation tool for the nervous system because the nervous system can't differentiate between what's real versus what's imagined. So the same reward centers go off in our brain and our body that go off when we're receiving a loving hug from somebody safe.
Oh my
And it's
gosh.
stimulating that release of oxytocin. So you're physiologically imprinting this narrative of seeing the good in the chaos into your nervous system and into your subconscious.
While you're giving yourself a hug and giving
Yeah,
yourself love and releasing
yeah.
it. That's
And you're
beautiful.
intentional with this letter and this Ayin Tov, and just the power of that is so cool. And I'm
That's so cool. And I also love a physical act because I find that it's really helpful to have a tool to go back to. And
yeah,
so you can use this anytime you're having a tough time seeing good in a situation or having a
exactly.
tough situation to be able to like physically cry. And for those who are listening and not watching, this goes on YouTube and on podcasts. Tamar literally just crossed her arms across each other and then took her palms and put them on her shoulder. So it's like a crossed hug, embracing yourself. And to be able to do that and have this mantra of, I can see the good in this situation, or even though I'm not sure what it is, I will know that there's some good in this situation. You said it so much
Trust
better
that
than
it's
me.
there.
Trusting that it's there.
There. Yeah.
Y'all might want to write it down after she said it, but that's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you can take it a step further, squeeze your shoulders and squeeze your arms, move up and down your arms and squeeze and really place that imprint. Again, like literally our nervous system does not know the difference between what's real or imagined. So you are receiving that safety and that love in your body when you do that for yourself. I forget who it is. She's like a really famous, like one of these positive self-growth people,
Bruce.
but she talks about the science of Mel something. She talks
Mel
about the science
Robbins.
of high-fiving yourself. Yeah, Mel
Mel
Robbins
Robbins. Yeah, she's great.
talks about the science of high-fiving yourself. It's the same thing, like high-five yourself and give you like it
Love it.
literally in your brain, you're receiving that. I'm so proud of you. Good job. And
Yeah.
you're like truly receiving that. We think on the outside it's like fake and it's BS, but like the way our physiology is being imprinted and actually receiving that. So we, again, using your personal power and your will to choose to just receive these things is so powerful and so life-changing. And truly, these little tiny things that we can do for ourselves somatically are the things that long-term completely change ourselves in the deepest, most profound, beautiful ways.
That's so incredible and just so many good tools right in there. And I love connecting it back to the month and the Jewish months. And as I delve deeper into all these months, and right now we're in the series of the winter months, which is dark and darkness over light and growth. And there's so much in there. And we're literally talking about that right now. It's so cool how you start out with these ideas of like darkness, right? Teves is tohu. It's all about the tohu, which is chaos and the darkness and anger and like all these deep things. And coming into it for a bit, you might think, oh, this is what I need to control essentially. But it feels as I learn about each month and as I get through it, it's so much about releasing all that
Mm-hmm.
already have it inside of our body. Like we have it in our liver and it's where it holds in our liver. And that, so what did you call it? The solar plex?
Solar plexus.
Solar plexus, where we hold our power. And it's learning about all of this is just giving us tools in the spiritual, energetic, and physical world, which is all the worlds I love to participate in, on how to really release and do what's best for ourselves emotionally and physically and get to this really wonderful place of consciousness and also of like balance and feeling
Mm-hmm.
good, because the world is so chaotic that we just need all of it to breathe.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And another thing, like about what you said with the fire, it's such a powerful visual because fire is one of the reasons why it's so healing for us is because of the constant movement of it, and to be able to just reflect on all those different layers and the ways that things are always constantly moving and changing, and trusting the goodness within the chaos, right? Like even though like things can be crazy right now, it's forever ebbing and flowing and changing and moving, and nothing is permanent. And at the same time, like the energy of anger is fiery and chaotic, and that raging, you can picture like that raging fire. Yet the element of the month of Teves is earth. And earth is the exact antidote to the chaos of fire because it's stable and it's grounding, and it gives us that safety and stability and anchoring. So that's another great somatic practice, which is grounding, but that is another way to just help calm the fires of the chaos in our lives and trust that there's goodness there, is focusing on the lower half of our bodies and focusing on grounding ourselves. And even if you're not able to like actually go out and do a grounding practice and put your bare feet on the grass, like you can just picture a grounding cord coming out of the base of your spine and going deep into the earth, and just using your imagination, just seeing it root into the earth and watch it go as deep as you can imagine into the earth, and just feeling into that energy of that stabilization and anchoring. And you can also press your feet into the floor and just feel the sensation of that solid ground underneath you that is unmoving and unchanging and supporting you.
Wow, what a wonderful visual. I'm going to use that. That's great.
Yeah, powerful.
Yeah. And then the fire also is like when I see the fire, I think about back to that getting rid of the narrative of the story. It's like fire, as you said, fire is always moving. It's never like staying in place. So you can try to fixate on if you're looking at a fire, fixate on the flame and you're like, ah, I got it. It looks like this. But within a second, it's gone. That image that you saw, it's moving to the next thing. And so if you think of it in that way, it's, oh, I know the narrative. I know what she was thinking. I know what it is. I know what it's about. But if you like take a second, that could all switch or look at it in a different way. And it's back,
Right.
yeah, it's back to the like 70 faces of the Torah, that we look at it all in different ways. Every story has basically, there's a song that I love by this band. Most people haven't heard of it, but it's called Poncha's Lament, very old. Dove, of course, introduced it to me. And there's a song about stories, and there's three sides to every story. It's like yours, mine, and the truth.
Mm,
It always stuck with me, so powerful, because if you think about narrative like that, then you could take the anchor and be like, this is my story, but there's that person's story, and then there's a third story that's possible. And then let's
yeah,
take that energy and have a good
exactly.
time.
And like you said before too, like sometimes the narrative is totally true, right? Like even going back to my own example of my own trauma, like that is very true. What happened to me, and I have every right to be raging and angry about it. It's completely justified, but I don't want to because it's keeping me in a prison.
Right.
And again, like looking back to the fire, how you said there's those different layers, the very top layer of the fire, which is white in color, that layer of the fire is purely divine. It's purely
Mhm.
divine. It's the same fire that kept the menorah and the Beis Hamikdash burning for 8 days. It's the same fire in the burning bush that didn't
Right.
burn the bush. And it's always going up. It's always reaching up back to source, back to God. Um, and I shared this story in with the ladies in my membership about like when I came to this point, like when I was healing from that trauma and I like was in that place of it was actually the night before that podcast episode came out when I was like feeling all
Oh,
the things like, oh my
wow.
God, my story's going out in the world. Ah.
Telling
Um,
everything.
yeah. And I needed to process, and I had my friends come over and we had a fire, like we had a bonfire outside of my backyard to like cleanse and get rid of the nervous energies. And my intention was going beyond. I was listening to that song by Moshav band La'ela, and it's my favorite song ever, and especially because of the way it's assisted my healing. But in the words, in the lyrics is beyond any words, any songs, any prayer that is whispered in this world, in the next world, in the next world, in the next word, La'ela, go beyond. So it was that was like my mantra of this is horrible. It's like this thing that happened to me that I have to deal with, but I just want to go beyond and I can trust that I can go beyond. And like that just became go beyond and like choosing that. And it's funny, like now thinking that we had a bonfire and that was the energy of the cleansing, that it was going beyond. Again, like looking at that fire of what part of the fire are we looking at? Are we looking at the destruction that fire causes, or are we looking at that cleansing divine fire that doesn't even destroy or burn, that didn't burn the burning bush, right? Like it didn't
Wow.
destroy it.
That's amazing. I love that. It's so interesting that it's also all happening while we have these like LA fires. Tamar and I
Yeah.
both lived in LA for some time and I grew up there, but I'm very attached to it. And I keep thinking of the devastation that it's causing in this month of Tohu, in this month of chaos
Yes.
and darkness and all of it. And it's so interesting to have this thing that could be all consuming and destructive, but can also be flipped. And you can take for people who need warmth, who are in a cold space, who are freezing, fire is an antidote for them, right? It's like healing, it's warm. And it seems like we have all of these things in life where it's something that can be all consuming and destructive, or you can take kind of control of that element and use it for good, which feels very of the moment in Teves in this month. It feels like a lot of the things we talked about in this podcast, in the moon circles, is using something that is intense and using it for the positive. And
Hmm.
I love that because I don't feel like that's focused on enough. It's like we were talking about in our circle about moving into, and I feel like it feels like the theme of the year for me. I have two feelings of the theme of the year for myself starting Rosh Hashanah. And one was leaning into discomfort, which is really hard for me because I know how to be really comfortable. I know I'm very good at self-care. I know how to take care of that. And leaning into discomfort is not that easy for me and is apropos very uncomfortable. And the other one that came up in Yom Kippur a lot for me was repair. And it feels like in this month, it's a lot. It's like taking this chaos, taking this tohu and kind of repairing it, right? Where that somatic hug that you were showing us with the iron giving yourself. I can see this as a negative, whatever it is I'm looking at, or I can choose, and it's always comes down to that power, which resides in the liver, as you said, and I can choose to make a choice and know, maybe I don't know what it is yet. Maybe I know this is truth, but I'm choosing that it doesn't serve me. And I can choose to turn it on its head
Mm-hmm.
and use it to heal myself or heal my surroundings or heal my relationship back to the intimacy of the relationship. Just so fascinating.
And I just want to invite a little reframe of it's not even about changing it, like turning it on its head. It's about the transformation of it, because part of it is acknowledging that it's there. We don't want to repress and pretend
Right.
like it's not there and be like, okay, forget it. That's not happening. Let me just shift over here. And it's no, the only way we can properly shift is by acknowledging the anger and acknowledging the pain and acknowledging the chaos and holding it with unconditional love and compassion, holding ourselves in unconditional love and compassion for feeling that, right? I always tell people we can never beat ourselves into healing or just repress ourselves into healing. You can love yourself into healing. So it's not necessarily loving the pain, but loving yourself through the pain and like through every painful thing we go through, always reminding ourselves, I love you and I accept you no matter what. And that even that just gives you like this, and
Yeah,
then you're able
release.
to go more into just the sensations. And then we can start to be like, okay, now what do I desire to feel? What do I desire my life to be? And then we can start to create that transformation and then redirect that energy that we are holding in our bodies for positive, productive means.
I love that. Wow. What a good conversation, Tamar. Thank you so much. I feel like I've been listening to these podcasts myself over and over throughout the month because I'm always like, ooh, I want to take it. I want to do it again. So I feel like I'm going to be listening to this one a lot over the next week. Just thank you so much. There's so much goodness here. Thank you for sharing yourself and your knowledge. It is very appreciated. I'm sure many people are going to get a lot from this podcast and hopefully have the ability to use it for themselves in this month and get to some higher levels.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor.
Please subscribe to Dream Detour on iTunes to stay up to date. And if you like what you heard, please leave a review. You can find me on Instagram at aura.schwartz. That's aura.schwartz, or stay in touch by emailing me at dreamdetourpodcast@gmail.com.